Good morning, and welcome to INSA's Coffee and Conversation with Rear Admiral Michael Studeman, Commander, Office of Naval Intelligence, and Director, National Maritime Intelligence Integration Office. Our program will begin shortly, but first, a message from our sponsor, Hawkeye.
The maritime environment is very distinct and very difficult to navigate. Everywhere, all the time. From illegal fishing and piracy to criminal activities such as smuggling, RF data provides insight to a host of interested parties needing to understand what's going on in the maritime domain. Hawkeye 360 remains at the leading edge, discovering and uncovering new use.
Good morning. For those of you all who are tuning in, you may have noticed we had a little bit of a glitch. We lost Wi-Fi in our office for the first time. So I really value your patience, but we are delighted to have Hawkeye sponsor today's coffee and conversation with Rear Admiral Studeman, and just wanted to say Happy New Year. Please don't be shy in submitting your questions in the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. And just as a reminder, this program is being recorded and will be available for viewing later this week. And now it is my pleasure to introduce John Serafini, Chief Executive Officer for Hawkeye 360 and also a member of INSA's Board of Directors. John, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Suzanne. Great to see you. And thank you to INSA for hosting yet again another great session with one of our nation's finest national security officials. I am delighted to introduce today Rear Admiral Mike Studeman, who assumed command of the Office of Naval Intelligence and became the Director of the National Maritime Intelligence Integration Office in August of 2022. Admiral Studeman is also the Principal Advisor to the Director of National Intelligence as National Intelligence Manager, Maritime. As most of you know, he most recently served as the Director for Intelligence, the J2, at Indo-PACOM. So thank you, and please welcome Admiral Mike Studeman. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, John and Suzanne. Appreciate INSA and Hawkeye sponsoring the session, and good morning to everybody. I thought maybe I would go through and just kind of ride a motorcycle through a museum of global maritime issues first, and maybe set the stage, maybe prompt some thoughts about where we might be able to have Q&A, and then and go wherever the crowd wants to go.
Wonderful. And Admiral Studeman, you may have received a little pop-up that says accept camera request. If not, I will ask our team to send that to you again. If you could click on that. Oh, there you are. Great. Wonderful. Perfect. Okay.
All right. Good. So now we're in audio and stereo and video. So if you would permit me, maybe I can kind of trip over some things that really concern us in the maritime domain that are part of our sort of our national security saga in dealing with major state powers and transnational challenges. I guess I should begin maybe with Russia and the Black Sea. You're aware that the Russian Navy, although losing its flagship there in the Black Sea, continues to fire cruise missiles at a certain pace with ships and submarines that remain fairly close to the Crimea because the Ukrainians have been successful with their area denial with their capabilities that have prevented the Russians from capitalizing on trying to gain access to the coast, support amphibious operations, and come at the Ukrainians with a multi-axis, multi-domain kind of offensive. So that continues apace there. As you know, the Ukrainians are looking for ways and have come up with some very innovative maritime techniques to be able to make life hard for the Russian aggressors, and that give and take will continue for some time. Great deal of concern, obviously, in the global community about food. Bread basket of the world is kind of in that region with Ukraine and the Russians, and so the exports out of the Black Sea along the maritime routes have been obviously constrained. The Russians continue to play a game of throttling the amount of exports that Ukrainians can have with regard to their grain. They do this via inspections north of the Bosporus, and they meter those, make life very difficult for throughput there. Even having agreed to the Black Sea Grain Initiative with Turkey, Ukraine, and Russia, that remains something that the Russians continue to calibrate for their own purposes. As you may know, Russia has an opportunity here to sell their own wheat here, and so they have every interest to continue to make life hard. The Russians are not just active in the Ukrainian area here with the war, but they remain very focused on the high north. They've militarized that area. They have had new rules issued from the Duma to control extraterritorially what is authorized under UNCLOS, and they aim to structure themselves with lots of weaponry, lots of capability, essentially from the Kara Sea all the way to the Bering Sea, as they posture for what they hope to be maybe a new northern sea route, which is used more commonly for commerce, et cetera. In the meantime, you know, the Russian Navy has survived this war largely intact, and so they continue to do what we've always seen, but they have more advanced capabilities with their Severodvinsk SSGN. There are 3 of those out there now, and they'll be building more. Very, very advanced submarine with multi-mission capabilities, and they have started doing their patrols in the Atlantic, holding the United States, you know, at risk in some of their patrol areas. And they recently moved one into the Pacific, and so there'll be a dual flank challenge for the United States in trying to track and hold accountable where those submarines are and what they're doing. They also have some advanced capabilities with our Gorshkov frigate with new Zircon missiles. These are hypersonic missiles with long range and high speed. And so the Russian threat and the way they intend to use their force for a variety of different purposes remains of deep concern. Let me skip to Iran real quick. Some people sort of count them out and say, hey, we don't care about the Middle East so much anymore, but that would be a mistake in terms of taking a look at the dynamics there. The Iranians continue to supply their proxies with a lot of weaponry, and they've been very active, in fact, in threatening not just who they perceive as their adversaries, but the pressure, the coercion, the activity against merchant ships comes and goes and surges depending on circumstances. And so Iran continues to make UAVs and other unmanned capabilities like hotcakes. And we've even seen a new drone carrier that they're building in Bandar Abbas. So we have to be very mindful, not just in terms of their ballistic missile program, trying to develop anti-ship capabilities, but the whole IRGCN, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and what they are building and how they are using their forces. And it's not just the Persian Gulf, of course, it spans all the way through the Saudi Arabian Peninsula and into areas of Yemen with the Houthis using one-way UAVs, unmanned surface vehicles, those kinds of things. So we know that's a challenge that we need to continue to monitor closely. You may not be aware, but the Iranians actually have some of their Navy on a global mission right now. West of South America, there is an Iranian frigate and an escort ship that are making their way to the southern tip of South America, trying to do a global around the world trip. And so the Iranians are trying to continue to expand sort of their capabilities and their reach. When it comes to China, gosh, it's such a broadly scoped topic with so much in there, but I would tell you that the military modernization in general, not just in the maritime area, but this is one of the fastest we've seen in human history. It goes well beyond what China needs for its defense. And so what you've seen is a buildup in every warfare area with advanced systems, long-range weapons, electronic warfare capability, innovative technology, a blue water fleet, along with other vessels of smaller size, medium size. It can do a whole bunch of the patrolling and the coercion around Taiwan to maintain what they are trying to do, which is effective control over what they claim in the South China Sea, with pressure tactics in the Senkakus, more activity in the Philippine Sea, more task group operations that go all the way from the Bering Sea, Sea of Japan, Philippine Sea, Central Pacific, and routinizing things around Australia for a variety of different purposes here. So this Navy is one that has a global reach, and we'll see more of the Chinese Navy as they work essentially their modern version of coaling stations. There are dozens and dozens of countries that China is trying to set arrangements for to get port access to be able to, on its veneer, provide just commercial access with small print caveats for allowing military vessels to come in. And so whether it's bases or stations or access, the Chinese are energetically working that across the middle bands of the planet's latitudes. And so you'll see more. Please don't underestimate China. It's not a regional dominance issue. This is a global issue where all countries should be concerned where it's going. We can go into more detail if you want. We don't just look at the excuse me, the maritime Navy elements of what China is up to. We have to be concerned about other things like the illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing activities. China has the largest fleet out there. It's something like 15,000 vessels. Really hard to track because they hide them behind other flags sometimes. And their predatory fishing practices are depleting resources left and right in many areas of the world that can't afford for their own GDP to be eaten alive by kind of the Chinese constant presence, chasing some of the fishing stocks. But this is a major issue, and it is not an overstatement to say that if you actually examined what's happening with many of the Chinese fishing fleet vessels and the people who run that fleet, that it's akin to slavery at sea. I would commend an article about what's happening off Ghana here that's been recently reported regarding Chinese behaviors there. So look, across the entire maritime domain, we have a host of issues. I just touched on a few of them there. I invite more of a deep dive on any one of those or anything else that would be of interest to you. So back over to the crowd here.
So thank you for that trip around the globe. I think you touched on just about every geographic area of interest. One question I have for you, though, is related to Sweden and Finland and NATO. What sort of geographic advantages does the potential ascension of Sweden and Finland to NATO alliance offer in the Arctic and even the Baltic Sea? What's your assessment?
Yeah, it makes complete sense that they would finally see that the geostrategic circumstances are such that it is better to be connected to something that could, in fact, be used for greater deterrence and for actual defense in the case of certain contingencies. Ukraine, I think, has blown out sort of this naivete that has existed with regard to the nature of threats in the community of nations, and people kind of realize how the use of naked power could change their freedoms and their potential for growth and their security. And so it makes complete sense that you would see these kinds of changes now. And there are capabilities that each of those countries provides that enhance where NATO could, in fact, have capabilities focused to be able to jointly, as part of this alliance, protect themselves and make sure that Russia thinks twice about advancing anywhere else on its periphery. Here, the stakes have to be higher because deterrence failed in Ukraine, and so the intent is for it not to fail anywhere else there on the western flank of Russia.
So kind of an intersection of our conversation related to Russia and China, as we've seen the Ukrainians fight back so stoically. And then we've also looked at China and Taiwan. What's your impression of kind of the lessons learned as it relates to the relationship or lack thereof between China and Taiwan, and what the Russia-Ukrainian war kind of has taught them, or lessons learned?
Yeah, in fact, I did spend some time in Taiwan. I've talked to the leadership of Taiwan, from the president on down, about this very thing, as we've had conversations about the lessons learned. And we've delivered ones that we knew of at the time. This was back in the spring of 22, and we'll continue to highlight lessons there. And there are many for the Taiwans, and they're taking it very seriously. They're taking a look at what can we do in the case of making China think twice about any kind of overt military resolution to the political problems of that area. And then how do we actually continue to fight and operate if and when the Chinese may do something very serious with their forces, which has a higher likelihood than ever before. We can talk about what that actually means, but they are very serious about their own security. That democracy of 24 million people is under threat. The Chinese continue to put a lot of aircraft and patrollers in all axes around Taiwan as they attempt to pressure both the Taiwans and signal to the United States and other allies about where they stand on things. And so the stakes have gone up, and the danger level is something that we need to take very seriously, and the Taiwans certainly do. And so, as you might imagine, those lessons are being factored and changes are being made. You may have noticed that the president already extended the conscription timeframe from 4 months to 12 months. I think that'll actually be initiated in 2024, but they've laid the groundwork for it, and to get better training for the folks so they can mobilize their entire society if necessary, just like Ukraine did, to be able to fight against any kind of aggressive force.
Thank you for those insights. So I'm going to go back and forth between some of the questions we've talked about, and then I've got some from our attendees today. But Eric Schmidt at the New York Times wants to know if Russia is responsible for the sabotage on the Nord Stream pipeline, and if so, how was that sabotage carried out?
Yeah, there's still some unknowns there. Obviously, we have a number of investigations underway with different countries taking a look at it. Keep in mind that those explosions occurred in Swedish waters and Danish waters in terms of their EEZ. And so the sabotage is confirmed based on what we know so far, but we haven't ruled out any guilty party at this stage of the game. So we're going to have to wait and see what the evidence and where this investigation or series of investigations, go. So stand by right now, but we don't know enough to make any conclusions right now.
Thank you. So Tony Cothran, Admiral Cothran has a question. Hi, Tony, good morning. His question is, in statement, naval intelligence had a key role in shaping U.S. strategy during the Cold War. How are you doing that with the China problem?
Yeah, so obviously DoD has a larger global campaign plan, China, and this is fundamentally something that is national and joint in its nature. Navy plays a very strong role. Many of the friction points and flashpoints are ones that surround the maritime domain. And so the Navy and Naval Intelligence, central player in all this. But that global campaign plan, China, involves all the combatant commands and supporting intelligence agencies involved in coordinating what are the best strategies and approaches and activities to be able to shape the nature of those dynamics that exist with our strategic competitors. And so it's very complex. There are lots of moving parts to this, but this is sort of a larger DoD and national defense strategy effort here, and we play a pretty vital role in all of that. I would just tell you that my view is that the knowledge on China is deficient across the U.S. government. One of my activities at the Office of Naval Intelligence is do my bit to help elevate so they're not just talking 101 or 201 about all of the things with a very large adversary in China in particular, but that we actually get better steeped in all of the subtleties and complexities of a very challenging problem set. China is the #1 challenge to America, period, stop. There are benign and malign elements to that challenge, and it requires our very best thinking, and it has to be rooted in a deep sense of what is going on, where is that other country coming from, what are its behaviors, where is it being led, who is leading it, how are they determining their calculus for the next set of actions, and what do we need to do to shape those, react to them, and ideally get ahead of them. So I would just tell you, this is a team of teams effort across the board. We can probably be more active and forward-leaning in many of the things we do with China, but we do have documents to sort of guide our way forward, if that helps.
So related to that gap or lagging with China, I have a question here from Scott Feldmeyer at Baricom. He wants to know what are the current or emerging capability gaps in OSINT for strategic deterrence in GPC?
Yeah, I think harnessing the full power of open sources is a well-recognized challenge. There are actually lots of different technologies and providers who assist with that over time. In the intelligence community, it's actually helpful that you have investigative reporters and others who are actually uncovering a whole heck of a lot of things that then protect maybe some classified validation of what's going on, with more details, obviously. And so I think we can actually use OSINT PAI to be able to do a lot more in terms of public diplomacy and work in the information domain. Often you have got to this, you run up against this very traditional cultural focus of everything's about sources and methods, and it's too risky to actually use my knowledge and convert it into action. But OSINT and PAI and all the services that are being provided today actually enable you to be able to protect your sources and methods and still convert your insights into action, which would involve things like exposing false narratives, being able to spread the truth rather than having misinformation dominate about any one issue, how you take on propaganda. And this has to be a steady, regular, confident, calm, objective approach of our government here in dealing with the mass of information that's out there that's being distorted by our adversaries. So OSINT is very powerful. We have some ability to be able to work with it. It grows every single day, and it's tough to keep up with it. But this is where AI, ML, and lots of other tools are going to be able to help us be able to sort of swim in those oceans and not drown with the deluge of data.
It's a good analogy. So Vivian O'Hara wants to know if you can share with listeners anything regarding JWICs and the need for operational modernization related to JWICs.
Yes, there's been some additional monies lately. It had been a refrain for years that we had been underinvested in some of the issues that would be broken into local area networks and then the transport layer and then some other services and the expansion of JWICs into areas where we need to make sure that they could be used for maybe even non-intelligence purposes. So the demands for JWICs have gone up, and it needs to be ready for all of the users. And so DIA and others have been able to fund modernization. I hear there is a path to be able to modernize in different places across the defense intelligence enterprise, and that's in play today. And there's more optimism than there had been a few years ago that we are, in fact, trying to make sure the JWIC stays, healthy and ready for the future.
Great. So I have thousands, I feel like, of questions pouring in, and they're all really good, and we're never going to get to all of them, but I'm going to do my best. So Joe Mazafro says DIA is focusing on fundamental military intelligence with Mars. How will this affect ONI?
Yeah, so Mars is a very, very capable suite of technologies that are designed to replace the MIDB instantiations that we had before. And I've been really impressed with how General Barrier is leading that Mars effort through. And we have support to do it. And we actually have arrangements at Indo-PACOM. We are prototyping a certain aspect of Mars there, and DIA has been game to work those things to be able to look at some early payoff for the investments that have been made. So I'm very excited about Mars, and I think that its set of tools will enable us to do all the things we need to do in peacetime with a decision cycle and the ability to comb through large data sets and to work warning and do predictive analysis and do all these other things, in addition to, God forbid, if we have to go to war, some of the targeting elements and other more serious business of the Defense Department.
Well, thank you for that assessment. And I apologize, I'm going to be jumping all over the place, but again, a good selection of questions here. Yannicki Cates wants to know how reliant ONI is on space assets, and how do you see AI changing the nature of that relationship?
Well, yeah, the whole U.S. government relies heavily on space assets, not just ones that are paid for by the U.S. government. There's a lot of commercial capabilities. Hawkeye, for example, facilitates getting a lot of coverage in a lot of areas. And so this is a family of capabilities that are vital for us to use that domain for all the purposes that relate to communications, surveillance, yeah, and many other activities. And so, of course, we are also dependent on those, particularly when you take a look at broad open ocean areas where our adversaries like to hide, where they like to manipulate, AIS, automated identification system, spoofing it or whatever. So we need to have multiple types of sensing capabilities and communication capabilities to be able to really find ground truth of what's happening, regardless of whether or not your adversary is a state actor or it's a transnational actor. And so we'll continue to have those dependencies. And then what you do with all of that data that's being furnished, right? That's big data. It's heterogeneous type, unstructured, structured. You have a whole variety of different flows that come in. And so that's where AI and ML and the OD&I's focus on the augmented intelligence, with machines, helps us be able to actually take advantage of those higher flows of big data, to crunch it, to have algorithms on top of it, to be able to find out what we need very quickly, to work automated identification, to be able to have things alarm out, to be able to get to predictive analysis. So in the old days, let me use an example, which is maritime. If you had a submarine and you detected it once over here, the typical response for planners and operators and intelligence support folks is to do a furthest on circle based on the speed of that submarine to say, you know what, it could be here. And you have this big honking circle. With today's technology, knowing the water column, other constraints for submarine forces, patterns of behavior, underwater terrain, where our sensor systems may be in all domains, you might be able to create a heat map. And you need machines to help you do that, to say, you know what, of all the areas in this big circle, the more likely areas to find where the submarine has gone, maybe in this section over here with maybe a threat over here. This is where the machines are helping us to be more predictive, more responsive, and to be very astute in how we track everything that we may need in peacetime all the way through wartime.
So you referenced data previously, and Rachel, one of our virtual attendees, wants to know, have you thought about data virtualization as a path ahead in operationalizing your data requirements?
I think we have a good approach with regard to how we're supporting the augmented intelligence with machines. We have our own innovation laboratory at ONI, and we take a look at advanced analytics. We take a look at data science, and we look for the applications. For us, there's an entire conversation to be had about the underlying architecture and cloud capabilities and tools and training for people to be able to do all this. So she's right to point out that there are lots of moving parts to this, and we need to be able to take a look at all of the available technologies to be able to convert this stuff into a faster OODA loop for maritime intelligence. So look, I see a world where, you know, we're going to be able to produce more predictive analysis. Our visualizations will be better for decision aids. We'll be able to do signal processing for big data, even if it's coming at you from 5, 6, 7, 10 different types of data. We will be able to mash those things up and be able to do modeling and simulation and be able to really get our arms around what's available. We are underexploiting what is potentially available even in today's environment with all of the data sources. All of that would help you too to identify where your dark spots are, and then where to focus your collection or your other efforts to make sure that if you couldn't shine a spotlight somewhere that you needed to, that your machines are telling you that you need to invest over here. And so that leads into the entire cycle of being able to then posture, you know, sensors in places that then can yield for you where you may in fact have too little knowledge.
So here's a very real-time question from Helen Nickerson. She states that ONI comes out with its publicly available worldwide threat to shipping report every week. What are the most common types of incidents, and in which regions are they the most prominent?
Yeah, we're global, so you can count on anywhere there may be piracy issues or things that are just part of the normal fact of life for, you know, any merchant mariner out there from any nation. But there are choke points, you know, obviously where the likelihood of criminal activity is much higher, whether you're talking about the Strait of Malacca or you're talking, you know, the Gulf of Guinea, you know, other parts of the world where there are just more desperate people that have more freedom of action and are not afraid to use their capabilities to, you know, rob merchant vessels and do things that you're familiar with. You know, you've seen the downtick in piracy off the Somali coast because many nations got together and we became very good with regard to protecting the passage of merchant ships through that region. But you know what? When one threat starts to die off because we've handled it, it's like whack-a-mole, another one will come up. So, you know, just talk to people who've had to go through, you know, the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, and they'll talk to you about their anxiety factor, not knowing whether or not, you know, they could be caught in the middle, a crossfire with, you know, Houthis and Saudis, and the use of a variety of different, you know, novel, you know, weapon types to be able to impede merchant traffic there. So, you know, whether purposeful or incidental, there are certain parts of the world where we will send out warnings to make sure that they're really on top of the latest developments. We've sent some out about the Black Sea, security issues in the Black Sea there. So, you know, if things die off with the Black Sea Grain Initiative and the risks go up, then we will obviously, you know, speak to those. If there are activities and flashpoints, it could be in the Western Pacific, obviously we'd be Johnny on the spot. But we also issue warnings related to things in the homeland. Sometimes we forget that there are maritime dangers that are here, and it's not just sort of far afield. Some warnings, for example, include things where we take a look at Chinese logging software, Chinese cranes that have been purchased and are being used in American ports that have connections back to, you know, Chinese companies that can see all that data, potentially manipulate it. So we are trying to provide warnings, whether it's homeland or far afield, to make sure we cover all of the territory and we don't miss a trick with regard to what our adversaries are up to.
So one area we haven't really delved into yet is with related to GEOINT, which is of interest to both our private and public members. What can you say about ONI and how you're using GEO in collaboration with partners in industry as well as partners in the government, and where would you like to see some improvements?
Yeah, one of our greatest allies is obviously NGA. You've had some great leadership there over time, from Tish Long through, Admiral Sharp and now Admiral Whitworth. So I am confident that that teaming will continue, and will continue to leverage many of the tools that they field there. The NRO has been excellent too in producing tools that relate to all of this. I have a small team that is doing what you would expect we would be doing at this stage, where you don't have a perfect AI ML tool yet. You need to have people in the middle training those tools, supervising whether or not they are actually finding what you hope to find as you try to, look for signal through all the static. So it's no different in every int we have that. But with GeoInt in particular, we have to be able to screen through, more of the take to be able to isolate those things that are truly meaningful for us. And so we're doing the training with the machines to be able to make ourselves be more efficient and reduce the false alarm rate, et cetera. So look, this is a partnership as we move every int forward and really squeeze the most out of each of those. I'm really excited about where it's headed here, and it is producing some really good results for us, saving a lot of time from what used to be a very industrial, manual, intensive effort.
So in relation to those results, where are you also potentially seeing any technology gaps?
Yeah, I think when we take a look at GeoInt and all the phenomenologies of GeoInt with multispectral, hyperspectral there, that we are taking advantage of what we are able to detect with more advanced sensor systems and be able to kind of focus those where they need for insights, coherent change detection over time. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're looking. I mean, it's really exciting where you're able to go with those capabilities, not just fixed frame, but video type things, and you're gonna have a whole lot of data as a result of what these things produce. And so there is a sort of that's that data management, big data challenge that we all face here. It's no different, maybe especially true for GeoInt versus some of the other ints.
So along the vein of technology, Donna Cantera from NGA wants to know personally, what is the most surprising development in naval technology or tactics that you have witnessed during your career?
Well, I will tell you, back in the early 2000s, I've been doing China for quite some time. I've been many different jobs where China wasn't the primary. But I spent some time on the cutting edge of the Chinese modernization, particularly in the maritime front, and the anti-ship ballistic missile capabilities and how that's migrating into the hypersonic glide, vehicle variants there and what they can do. I'm not surprised by it, but I would tell you our ability to make sure that we are able to factor that technology, create some of our own. Be able to ensure that we're keeping a pace with those challenges. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of kinetic and non-kinetic ways that you deal with those missile systems. But I will tell you that that's of concern, for us, and we have to take the threat seriously. So when it comes to missile technology and how quickly it's been able to evolve over time, particularly with the Chinese that test more missiles per year than all countries combined, we have to be really tuned in to where that's going and what it means for our forces.
So the good work that you all do to protect our nation couldn't be done without the workforce that you have there. I have a question here from Newhouse at FIU, and he wants to know what work is being done to directly engage with colleges and universities to recruit new talent as well as technologies.
Yeah, I love Florida International University. As a Southcom J2, I dealt with them a lot, their intelligence fellows program, and many other ways that they connect in. So I'm not surprised you get a hard question from FIU. Look, I believe strongly in those lash-ups with the academic world here. When I was the Indo-PACOM J2, we revived some relations with the University of Hawaii, created opportunities in past to connect with students who are interested in national security, who might want to stay in the area because of families, right? And to capitalize on the diversity of and the skills that come with people who are in the Mid-Pacific, that come from different parts of Asia. And so I had the same relationship with FIU when I was a Southcom J2. And no matter where I go, I believe strongly that we need to invest in opportunities for our younger generation, the people who will take our jobs later on, and give them a stronger starting point than we had early in our careers. We pay it forward. This is our obligation, our duty, to be able to take what we know and the experiences that we have and share those early on, give people choice. They don't have to choose coming into the military or the intel community or the national security field, but give them options, right? Make them more informed and aware, give them experiences through internships and things like that. This is the way that we continue to bring in talent and to give it a better ability to flourish in some of the most important things that we do as a nation.
So I'm glad this is a great segue to something I was going to close with in a little while, but every year we have our annual Achievement Awards, INSA Achievement Awards, where we give out 6 awards to future leaders of the intelligence community. One is actually named after your father, and I saw that you were on the registration list. So we look forward to seeing you on February 16th. But that's really, so important, as I know a lot of intelligence community organizations look at retention and ensuring that we are recognizing folks that are more junior in the intelligence community, just not our senior luminaries. So we appreciate your support of that with your personal time. So you're a wonderful mentor. So here's a question from Glenn Lemons, going kind of back to China, Russia, Iran, even North Korea. Short of direct military intervention against any of the near peer powers, do you assess the US and our allies are doing enough to interrupt illicit supply chains, which are supporting these disruptive global activities?
Look, it's really tough. I mean, these people hide in the shadows. They hide inside legitimate commercial business. So I think everyone is trying, but the sheer volume of what's happening in the criminal world and with some state-sponsored activity is just overwhelming at times. And so it is a well-known area where we go often, but our capacity to deal with it is probably insufficient. And we need to continue to stay in the game on these things. You will never eliminate drug trade from South America, but you have to, blunt what you have to protect American lives, for example. And so we are in the game. We are in the game with our allies and partners. There's a great deal of cross coordination. You'd be proud of it if you saw it. And we continue to advance information sharing and intel sharing across the board, across TIP and Q, others, to be able to work things. Sometimes we do operations together, or we had lead and follow. And it's some of the quiet work that we do in national and international security here. So I wish we had more resources. I wish we had more assets to be able to truly knock back a lot of it. But we're doing our best, I think, is the way to describe it. And we have a lot of talented people who are committed to doing right. And even if we save, a few lives out there, then it's worth spending our time in this area. And so I do think people are making a difference.
Well, you preempted my last question, as I'm getting a couple messages from the team telling me I need to wrap things up. But I want to see if you could end us on a positive note. And you just did, talking about cross coordination and information sharing. So I just want to thank you for your time this morning, as well as your service to our country. And I look forward to seeing you in February.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and to folks here on net or watching, continue to do great things. there's a lot at stake today in our geopolitical environment, and it deserves the very best effort of everybody here. And so best of luck. And if I can be of service or help to anybody, please don't hesitate to reach out. You know where to find me.
We do.
In Maryland at the Office of Naval Intelligence.
Great. Well, thank you, and we appreciate your support. Have a good day.
You
So
too.
that is all of our time here. Just want to give a shout out to Hawkeye 360 and John Serafini for supporting today's conversation. When we finish up, you will have an opportunity to complete a survey. Let us know how we did. Let us know who you want to hear from again. And then on January 24th, we will be holding another coffee and conversation with CIA Deputy Director for Analysis, Linda Weisgold. And then I'll also be moderating another conversation on Valentine's Day, February 14th, with DCSA Director Bill Lietzow. And again, I mentioned the Achievement Awards, February 16th. That is an evening event, extremely uplifting. It's an Army Navy Country Club in Arlington. Would encourage folks to go on our website and consider registering and bringing someone that you mentor. A future leader of the intelligence community, I think, is so important. And then on March 8th, we will be hosting our annual spring symposium in person. And then last but not least, our Intelligence and National Security Summit that we co-host with AFCEA International is moving to July. We have regularly held it in September, and this year we will be holding it in the summertime. That concludes today's morning program. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and thanks again for your patience with our audio visual glitch, and have a wonderful day.